I'm Floyd B. McKissick Jr. with the North Carolina Utilities Commission. I will be presiding over this hearing. With me this morning are Chairman William M. Brawley and Commissioners Tommy Tucker and Donald Vandervaart. Pursuant to the State Ethics Act, I remind all members of the commission of their duty to avoid conflicts of interest and inquire if any commissioner has any known conflicts of interest with regard to the matter coming before this commission. Let the record reflect that no such conflicts have been identified. I now call for hearing docket number E2 sub 1395, which is the application of Duke Energy Progress LLC, which I shall refer to hereinafter at times as DEP, for a certificate of public convenience and necessity, which I shall refer to herein at times as a CPCN, to construct and operate approximately 240 megawatt F-class simple cycle gas-fired combustion CT electric generating facility to be located next to the 5 existing combustion turbines at the Sherwood H. Smith Jr. Energy Complex in Richmond County, North Carolina. I'll refer to the proposed facility at times as CT5. The Smith CT are simply the facility. DEP filed the CPN application for the facility on November 7th, 2025. I will refer to that at times as the application. Along with the application, DEP filed the direct testimony and exhibits of witnesses Michael Quinto, Director of IRP Advanced Analytics, Daniel Donishaw, General Manager of Generation Execution and Technologies, and John Robert Smith Jr., General Manager of New Gas Generation Development. On January 7th, 2026, the Commission issued an order scheduling hearings, establishing procedural and filing requirements, and requiring public notice. The scheduling order set the expert witness hearing for June 1st, 2026. On January 16th, 2026, DEP filed a motion for limited modifications to the proposed procedural schedule and customer mailing requirements, which, among other things, requested that the Commission reschedule the expert witness hearing to July 1st, 2026. On January 22nd, 2026, the Commission issued an order granting DEP's motion, including the request to reschedule the expert witness hearing for today. On March 31st, 2026, DEP filed its affidavits and certification of publication of public notice. On May 1st, 2026, the public staff filed a motion requesting amendments to the procedural schedule, including a request to reschedule the expert witness hearing to a date no earlier than September 2026. On May 11th, 2026, the public staff filed the joint direct testimony exhibits of witnesses Khalib A. Hill, Dustin R. Mertz, and Leah M. Weaver. On May 20th, 2026, the public staff filed corrections to the pre-filed testimony of its witnesses. On June 1, 2026, DEP filed the rebuttal testimony of its witnesses. On June 10th, 2026, the Commission issued an order denying the public staff motion to reschedule the expert witness hearing to no earlier than September. On June 12, 2026, the Commission issued an order modifying the schedule for filing witness lists and estimates for cross-examination times. On June 16, 2026, DEP filed a motion requesting that Commission allow DEP witness Andrew Browning to substitute for and adopt the testimony of DEP witness John Robert Smith Jr. On June 17, 2026, DEP filed a proposed order of witnesses, estimates of cross-examination times, and witness lists. On June 22nd, 2026, the Commission issued an order allowing witness Browning to substitute for and adopt the testimony of witness Smith. In addition to the public staff, whose participation in this matter is recognized pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 62-15, the Commission has allowed the intervention of the Carolina Industrial Group for Fair Utility Rates 2. This brings us to the expert witness hearing for the day. I now call upon the parties to announce their appearances, beginning with DEP.
Morning, Presiding Commissioner McKissick, Jason Higginbotham, appearing on behalf of Duke Energy Progress. With me is Mason Maney of the law firm McGuire Woods. also appearing on behalf.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Nadia Lohr with the public staff on behalf of the using and consuming public, and with me is Z Preach.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Erin Duffy with the law firm of Ward and Smith. I'm here today on behalf of the Carolina Industrial Group for fair utility rates.
Thank you. Are there any preliminary matters that need to be addressed before we begin today's hearing? And if not, I'll go over some procedural details.
Yes, thank you, Presiding Commissioner McKissick. DEP has two initial matters to address. We would ask that the application of Duke Energy Progress LLC for a certificate of public convenience and necessity to construct a 240 megawatt natural gas fueled simple cycle combustion turbine electric generating facility in Richmond County, including exhibits 1 and 2, filed on November 6, 2025, and corrected exhibit 4, filed on December 19th, 2025, and amended exhibit 3, filed on May 8th, 2026, supporting the application, be marked for identification and then entered into the record at the appropriate time. Exhibits 2, 3, and 4 to the application contain confidential information, and DEP requests that the information, that information filed confidentially be accepted into the record confidentially and maintained by the commission under seal.
Without objection, your motion is allowed.
Thank you. The second item too is that just in the interest of efficiency and if there are no objections, DEP would request the ability to call all of its witnesses to the stand at the same time to answer questions as a panel during both DEP's direct and rebuttal cases.
Without objection, that motion is allowed. I think it will increase efficiency and perhaps expedite the hearing. And I'm optimistic that we'll be out of here today before lunchtime.
Yes.
And I don't want to push back lunch to 4 o'clock. So,
Thank you. Nothing else from DEP.
all right. Are there any other matters at this time? Okay, if there are not, the thing I would simply state for the record in terms of the way we're going to proceed, is that we're going to go ahead and go through the sequence for cross-examination that was proposed by DEP in consultation with the parties in its proposed order of witnesses, estimates of cross-examination times, and witness list that was filed on June 17th, 2026. We know there have been some modifications to that list, which have been consented to and stipulated to by the parties. At the time each witness or panel is made available for cross-examination, I will hear motions to enter pre-file testimony, summaries of testimony, and exhibits into the record unless there are objections, and I will enter the pre-file testimony and summaries, and we will admit pre-file exhibits into the record at that time. Pursuant to ordering paragraph number 23 of the Commission scheduling order, parties are instructed to refrain from reading witness summaries into the record, but they will be duly acknowledged and become formally a part of the record. And with that, we'll go ahead and recognize Duke for his first panel.
Thank you, Presiding Commissioner McKissick. At this time, Duke Energy calls Michael Quinto, Andrew Browning, and Daniel Downishad to the stand.
If you all could put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to provide in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes,
I do. Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so starting first with you, Mr. Quinto, would you please state your full name and business address for the record?
My name is Michael Quinto. My business address is 525 South Tryon Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28202.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Duke Energy as the Director of IRP Advanced Analytics.
Please briefly describe your role and responsibilities at Duke Energy.
I provide leadership and direction into the company's IRP modeling and planning process and financial and portfolio analytics to support the Carolinas IRP functions, The team I lead supports the development and presentation of Duke Energy Progress's and Duke Energy Carolina's IRP filings, including the company's 2025-2026 Carbon Plan and Integrated Resource Plan and other regulatory and planning functions.
Mr. Quinto, did you cause to be pre-filed in this docket direct testimony consisting of 27 pages?
Yes.
Do you have any changes to your direct testimony at this time?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions today that appear in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Your direct testimony does not include any confidential information, correct?
Correct.
And did you pre-file a summary of your direct testimony for the commission?
Yes.
Presiding Commissioner McKissick, I would ask that Mr. Quinto's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, as well as a summary of his direct testimony.
Without objection, your motion is allowed.
Thank you. Turning to you next, Mr. Browning, would you please state your full name and business address for the record?
Yeah, my name's Andrew Browning. I go by Andy. My business address is 525 South Tryon Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28202.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Duke Energy Business Services as the Vice President of Gas Generation Projects within the Project Management and Construction Department of Duke Energy.
Please briefly describe your role and responsibilities at Duke Energy.
I provide leadership and direction for a team of project managers, engineers, sourcing resources, and estimators responsible for three key groups, which include gas program management, gas project development, and gas generation construction for new natural gas fuel generation projects, both in the Carolinas and in other jurisdictions where Duke Energy owns generation resources and provides electric service. Once a need for new natural gas fuel generation is identified, my team is responsible for developing conceptual designs, cost estimates, and initiating project structure and initial contracting up to the point of obtaining all necessary internal and regulatory approvals, permits, purchase orders, and contracts.
And Mr. Browning, is it correct that pursuant to the Commission's June 22nd, 2026 order issued in this proceeding, you have adopted the direct testimony of Mr. John Robert Smith, Jr., filed in this docket consisting of 15 pages?
Yes.
Do you have any changes to the direct testimony at this time?
No.
If I were to ask you the same questions today that appear in your pre-filed direct testimony, would the answers be the same?
Yes.
Your direct testimony did not include any confidential information, correct?
Correct.
And did you also pre-file a summary of your direct testimony for the commission?
Yes.
Presiding Commissioner McKissick, I would ask that Mr. Browning's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, as well as a summary of his direct testimony.
Without objection, your motion is allowed.
Thank you. Finally, Mr. Donashad, would you please state your full name and business address for the record?
My name is Daniel Donashad, and my business address is 525 South Tryon Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28202.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Duke Energy Carolinas as General Manager, Generation Execution and Technologies.
Please briefly describe your role and responsibilities at Duke Energy.
I lead a team that helps prepare and execute the company's generation fleet modernization strategy, including siting of the proposed facility at the Smith Energy Complex in Richmond County.
Mr. Donashad, did you cause to be pre-filed in this docket direct testimony consisting of 14 pages?
Yes.
And do you have any changes to your direct testimony at this time?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions today that appear in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
And your direct testimony does not include any confidential information, correct?
Correct.
And did you pre-file a summary of your direct testimony for the commission?
Yes.
Presiding Commissioner McKissick, I would ask that Mr. Donashad's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, as well as a summary of his direct testimony.
Without objection, your motion is allowed.
Thank you. The panel consisting of Mr. Michael Quinto, Mr. Andrew Browning, and Mr. Daniel Donashad is now available for questions from the parties and commission on their respective direct testimonies.
And I would remind the commissioners, as this is relating to direct testimony, they will be back for rebuttal. Now, I'm not seeing any time that was initially reserved for cross-examination except for commission questions, and good. I'm seeing the heads nod in that direction. I know we were talking about resequencing things. There was a a different concern, but it looks like we're back to where we were originally. All right. With that, we now are going to provide some what I will call commission staff questions that are directed to this panel, and then we'll see if there are any further commissioner questions on direct. Mr. Quintos, can you speak specifically to the need for the proposed facility in the narrow 2030 to 2031 timeframe?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a critical time for our system as we're bringing additional load on that's going to benefit customers. We really need a resource in this time frame to continue to maintain reliability of the system. On a go-forward basis, this resource is going to continue to provide reliable peaking capacity for the system, but is one of the few executable resources that we have to continue to add to the system to maintain reliability and integrate these customers reliably.
Thank you. And Mr. Browning, since you've adopted Mr. Smith's testimony, can you compare the construction complexity of this facility to the two CTs at Marshall?
Yes, sir. This will be a smaller facility, footprint's much smaller, and the intricate of additional gas compression is not going to be required. So it'll be a little simplified compared to Marshall.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead now and open it up for other commissioner questions, if there are any. So we're going to make it cool. Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Vandervaart.
And is this our only shot at these guys?
No, they will be back.
Okay,
They will be back. There may be some of your questions might be more appropriate for rebuttal, not knowing what they are.
gotcha. Okay, I'll wait.
You'll wait.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Same here. Okay, very good. Are there any questions on commissioner questions?
None from DEP.
All right. In that case, you're relieved at this time, but I know you'll be back in within the next hour. Thank you. All right. We go ahead and recognize Ms. Lohr for public staff.
The public staff now calls Caleb Hill, Destin Metz, and Leo Weaver to the stand.
If you could put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Two of you would like to be sworn and one affirm. Is that correct? All right. For those being sworn, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Dr. Weaver, do you affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I so affirm.
Thank you.
Mr. Hill, would you please state your name, business address, and current position for the record?
Good morning, Commissioners. Caleb Hill. My business address is 430 North Salisbury Street, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm an engineer with the Public Staff Energy Division.
Mr. Metz, would you please state your name, business address, and current position for the record?
My name is Dustin Metz. My business address is 430 North Salisbury Street, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm the Director of the Public Staff's Energy Division.
And Dr. Weaver, would you please state your name, business address, and current position for the record?
My name is Leah Weaver. My business address is 430 North Salisbury Street in Raleigh, North Carolina. My current position is a public utilities engineer in the Research, Economics, and Modeling section of the Energy Division of the Public Staff.
Thank you. And Dr. Weaver, I'll address the rest of these questions to you, although they pertain to the entire panel. On May 11, 2026, did you prepare and cause to be pre-filed direct joint testimony in this docket consisting of 55 pages, 3 appendices, and 11 exhibits?
Yes, we did.
And did your testimony and exhibits contain confidential information?
Yes, they did.
On May 20, 2026, did you prepare and cause to be pre-filed corrections to your joint direct testimony and exhibits?
Yes, we did.
And on June 30, 2026, did you prepare and cause to be pre-filed additional corrections to your joint direct testimony and exhibits?
Yes, we did.
Other than the corrections filed on May 20, 2026 and June 30, 2026, do you have any additional corrections to your pre-filed joint testimony?
No, we do not.
If I were to ask you those same questions today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
And lastly, did you prepare and cause to be pre-filed on June 30, 2026, a summary of your joint testimony in docket number E-2 sub 1395A?
Yes, we did.
Presiding Commissioner McKissick, at this time, I move that the pre-filed joint direct testimony and exhibits of Mr. Hill, Mr. Metz, and Dr. Weaver as corrected, and the pre-filed summary of joint testimony of Mr. Hill, Mr. Metz, and Dr. Weaver be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Without objection, your motion is allowed.
Okay, this panel is available for cross-examination.
Right. I believe we do have some cross-examination times that have been reserved. So at this point in time, I guess we would go to Duke, followed by Sigfer.
Presiding Commissioner McKissick, if it's okay with the commission, we would respectfully request to allow Sigfer to conduct their cross-examination first.
Sigfer, go right ahead, Ms. Duffley.
Thank you. My questions are for the panel, so just answer however you feel is most appropriate. The public staff represents the using and consuming public, correct?
That's correct.
Does the using and consuming public include commercial, industrial, and large load customers?
Yes, it does.
In developing your recommendations in this proceeding, did the public staff consider the unique reliability needs and economic concerns of commercial and industrial customers as opposed to residential customers?
So looking at the overall need of the facility goes back to looking at the aggregate of all customers within the Duke Energy Progress's service territory, and as well as the resource plan. So in that vein, it's comprehensive of all customers and all the inputs that are within the modeling framework.
Thank you. Is it true that one key difference between the public staff's modeling and Duke's modeling in this proceeding was that the public staff incorporated large load curtailment in its modeling and treated that curtailment as a capacity resource?
So there's a few elements there. So as we started out on this overall journey, is that yes, the public staff had a base set of assumptions based upon Duke's. Hopefully, I'm getting the nomenclature correct on the advancing load forecast. And within that analysis, we took into consideration the Duke's executed ESAs and modeled that framework under the contract provisions that were within. But again, Mr. Thomas testified to the ins and outs on what was included within that modeling framework. So when we looked at that analysis, yes, large load curtailments could be dispatched in a way, and we evaluated that and came to our conclusions. However, as we're sitting here today, since filing our initial testimony, Duke updated its IRP forecasting information or load forecasting information. I believe they're now calling the nomenclature something along the lines of supplemental advancing development load. I'm looking to my colleagues if I'm getting the naming convention correct.
I think it's spring 2026 updated advancing development, something like that.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Weaver. So when looking at that new load information, which again, we received approximately 3 or 4 weeks ago, plus or minus, when the confines of the CPIRP, that we only had that for about 2 weeks and we were still doing our due diligence. And as we continue to do our due diligence and the completion of the CPRP, we further reflected and reviewed, and that's why our testimony was corrected to reflect the new realities of more information that was gleaned out of the new IRP. So had to do a little bit of foundation there. So yes, originally it was based upon that advancing development for that forecast at that snapshot in time. But what we're making our recommendation on this case, that is not a factor.
There's no large load curtailment considered at this point?
When we're looking at the establishment of, for this facility, again, the public staff modeled in its advancing development and went through quality controls on its resource planning for large load curtailment. When we're making our recommendation as we sit here today, the public staff has not completed equivalent analysis like we did in our original CPRP information. That we are basing, our recommendation is based upon Duke's supplemental advancing spring forecast that was filed approximately 4 weeks ago.
And if I may, just a couple things. Mr. Metz referenced Mr. Thomas in his response, and just wanted to point out that that was in reference to the CPIRP testimony that Mr. Thomas provided. As Mr. Metz was saying, the modeling was provided to us about 4 weeks ago, and that was provided in rebuttal. Part of their rebuttal, they reran the model and provided new modeling data for us to analyze and review.
So has the public staff envisioned that large load customers could have their usage of electricity reduced or stopped during certain peak periods?
Well, so all customers can have their ultimate usage stopped, curtailed, limited by many measures, DSM measures. But again, for purposes of the ESA themselves, there are provisions within the ESA in which certain customers have agreed to for certain amounts of curtailment. So if the customers who have signed on the dotted line have agreed to those provisions, then yes, I hope the utility holds them accountable to the agreements per the contracts that are in place.
Would large load customers be compensated for curtailing their electricity usage?
So I would go ahead and object to this line of questioning as not relevant to the proposed facility application in this proceeding. We're talking more here about the need for this facility rather than any kind of load curtailment that could take place.
Would you like to be heard, Ms. Duffy?
Yes, thank you. And with all due respect, just the concept of large load curtailment has been introduced, and it is worthwhile for my client to explore what that might look like in a future world. And so I think the questions are relevant.
I'm going to go ahead and sustain the objection so we can move things along.
As you wish. Do you agree that according to North Carolina General Statutes, Section 62-110.1E, in order to grant a CPCN, the commission must find that a proposed facility will maintain or improve upon the reliability of the existing grid?
I don't have the statute in front of me, but subject to check, that sounds along what the statute states.
Do you further agree that according to 62-110.93, any generation and resource changes enacted to comply with carbon dioxide emissions reductions goals must maintain or improve upon the adequacy and reliability of the existing grid?
Again, I do not have the statute in front of me, but subject to check. Yes, that sounds correct.
Do you agree that that statutory requirement that the reliability of the grid be maintained applies equally to the benefit of all customer classes, including commercial, industrial, and large load customers?
As I stated earlier, is that when we're looking at overall resource planning, it's for the overall aggregate of customers. And again, when we had this discussion within the confines of the CPRP, I believe there was a parallel path that we talked about. Well, there's the concept of reliability is very generic and it's not defined. So for purposes of this analysis and for this CPCN, that we're using the reserve margin as a proxy, if you would, for determination of reliability.
Would you characterize electrical service that can be curtailed for a particular customer or class of customers at any time as reliable or adequate?
I'm going to repeat my objection. I think we're getting out of the focus of this proceeding when we start talking about elements of curtailment and their impact on customers.
I'm going to give Attorney Duffy a little leeway, but, understanding what the concern has been articulated.
I will, thank you.
Sure.
Please restate the question.
Do you agree that customers from all customer classes should be able to expect and plan for uninterrupted electric service, barring an emergency or an unforeseen force majeure type event?
That's a very complicated question. I mean, because electrical service is not 100% guaranteed to any customer, whether you're distribution connected or transmission connected. A generation plant is not expected that it's going to run 100% of the time. So there's always the possibility for interrupted service. So in that vein, individual end-use customer needs to balance those risks and challenges and costs to its overall process and implement strategies that they feel is appropriate.
Would you agree that commercial and industrial customers have concerns about curtailment that are different from residential and non-business customers, in that curtailment or disruption can impact or even stop production, cause customers to miss deadlines and waste materials, even subject personnel to serious bodily harm and injury, pardon me?
I'm sorry, I have to object again. This is getting out of the scope.
And I will sustain that objection, yeah.
Public staff consult with any large load commercial or industrial customers before incorporating curtailment into its modeling?
So yes, we did have conversations, but again, from confines of this IRP, or apologies for this recommendation in this case is not a function of those curtailments. Is again, as I stated before, this is based upon Duke's updated supplemental spring load forecast and our potential reservations of, while the unit ultimately, and look to my colleagues to correct me here, but is my understanding is that even under the new updated forecast, this unit is not specifically needed in 2030. It can be delayed till 2031. However, the public staff, as we're continuing to review this new updated load forecast and the assumptions that are in it, we have larger concerns about the reliability impacts that are occurring in 2031. So in order to mitigate that, we think it is reasonable, with some caveats that I need to explain, to go ahead and move forward with this resource to start shrinking the challenge to address the reliability events that we're seeing on the 2031 horizon. Now, in that trade, if you would, for lack of a better word, is saying, yes, if you look at the utility, it takes time to develop projects. I just can't build a combustion turbine overnight, a combined cycle overnight, a nuclear power plant overnight. It takes time. And so as we're sitting here today, and I believe Mr. Quinto had made this statement, is based upon what there is today, yes, the public staff is supporting and recommending approval for this CT in this year. If we could go potentially back in time, I would recommend a very different resource because the system needs energy and capacity. But we're not here, we're not able to go back in time. So we're forced to come to this conclusion with the resource that we have on hand and start mitigating the challenges that we're seeing in 2031. Look to my colleagues for anything they want to add on to that.
I would just add, Mr. Metz mentioned that we're seeing risks as we enter into 2031 and beyond. If one of the potential cross exhibits that we submitted, exhibit number 3, if that cross exhibit shows the development timeline that Duke provided us in rebuttal testimony. And one of the items that we noted is that in that modeling, and as well as discussed in Mr. Quinto's rebuttal testimony, the modeling showed an advancement, an acceleration of CTs 6 and 7, or the potential Blues Creek CTs. And in his direct or rebuttal testimony, he indicates that likely on an execution timeline that's not possible. And so that is just another point to highlight our concerns with meeting our energy and capacity needs in 2031. Dr. Weaver?
Yeah, I'll just add to that in this exhibit 3, Mr. Metz was talking about how there's a potential that we don't necessarily agree with the company on the 2030 in-service date, but we do think it's needed by 2031. In this rebuttal modeling that's portrayed in exhibit 3, one of their models, which happens to be the one that included the large load curtailment, that actually delayed the facility to 2031, and it was cheaper than the alternative. And so we think there's a variety of reasons, but again, we just don't have any alternatives to sit here in front of you today to discuss. We feel like this is the only option. Duke has continued to sign load at a rate that exceeds their ability to build generation. And so we're in this position where we feel compelled to recommend approval of this facility simply because there's no other options, even though this is a facility that costs $500 million and you're not getting a lot of value out of it for that amount of money.
And since we're not pivoting to 2031, from my view, it removes this whole discussion on the large load curtailments off the table. We're looking at 2030 for the reasons that we talked about.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Go ahead.
Duke has no cross-examination for these witnesses. Thank you.
All right. Ready, Laura? Go right ahead.
Thank you. As an initial matter, Witness Hill discussed one of our potential cross exhibits, cross exhibit 3. We're happy to introduce that into the record for the commission's convenience. Let's see.
Absolutely.
So public staff, potential cross exhibit number 3. Mr. Hill, could you quickly describe to the commission what this document is?
Yes, I can absolutely do that. So as I stated in the rebuttal testimony, Duke provided 2 new modeling data sets to the public staff. One was an economic development data set based on the supplemental Advancing Development 2026 spring update. And the second was that same model, but with a large load curtailment option. And so on page 1 of that exhibit, we show the total megawatt build out for the different resources across the first row there: batteries, combined cycles, advanced class CTs, etc. And then the years 2030 through 2040 to show kind of what resources are selected in those 2 models and what time frame they're selected on. On page 2 of that exhibit, we present our analysis of the PVRR. Duke was not able to provide a PVRR analysis for these 2 models. So we tried to analyze it ourselves and for the commission's information. And so on the left-hand side, we have the spring 26 economic development load. And we show the PVRR across the top there, 2030 through 2050 on a combined system basis. And then on the right-hand side, it is that same model with the large load curtailment in the model as well. Dr. Weaver, do you have anything to add to that exhibit?
No, I think that was pretty comprehensive.
Thank you. Presiding Commissioner.
McKissick, I'm using the online version
It's
and,
different.
yeah, exhibit,
Exhibit 3 on our online version is different than what you just testified
I
about.
was gonna say, yeah, because there's only one page in this.
That is correct. The one that
Do we need to
have
look at the book?
on our online link, Exhibit 3 is a different document, which is identified as a confidential exhibit.
Okay,
It-
that
It
should,
talks about summary of public staff modeling assumptions.
Okay,
It is,
Commit-
in our book at least, it has both pages.
It has both pages.
yeah, it's in the book, but it's not the online.
find the
Uh,
title for you.
It's okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I think they ran into this occasionally in the CPRP proceeding where
Okay.
there were different documents available through our
Mhm.
virtual link compared to the book.
And
We-
this one is titled Rebuttal Load Build Out.
You're getting correct. It is. Yeah, that's what we went to. We go down to 3. That's what we get. We're going to take a recess just for about 2 minutes to get this straight because we are seeing a different document through the virtual link that we have than what was identified by Attorney Lohr. But it does appear the document in the binder is the correct one. So we're not quite sure what's going on here with the virtual link.
All right, I just reopened it and I got a different document. It's not labeled the way they described, so.
So we're off the record momentarily, just to get this discrepancy resolved. Go ahead, Attorney Laura, if you want. Oh, wait a minute, we're missing a commissioner. Let's wait for Commissioner Tucker to get back in the room. All right, we're back on the record.
Presiding Commissioner McKissick, I would ask that this public staff potential cross exhibit number 3 be marked as public staff Hill, Metz, Weaver, redirect exhibit 1.
Without objection, your motion's allowed.
Thank you. And this one, I believe you all spoke to this. Mr. Metz, maybe if you want to start off, you spoke regarding the position that we are in now and the need for the Smith facility. And you discussed the 2026 spring advancing development load forecast update. Can I have you turn to public staff potential cross exhibit number 2? And that is the, in the index that is titled rebuttal load forecast.
Public staff potential cross exhibit number 2, page 101, has figure 2 spring 2025 advancing development forecast with updated economic development adjustment.
That's correct. Presiding Commissioner McKissick, I would ask that this document be marked Public Staff Hill, Metz, Weaver, redirect exhibit 2.
Without objection, your motion's allowed.
Thank you. And Mr. Metz, can you, briefly reiterate what this graph shows and how this plays into your recommendation for approval of the Smith facility?
So this is a figure out of Duke's rebuttal testimony. And looking at the overall graphs that you're seeing the relative change to the forecasts based upon different snapshots in time. And so the dotted blue line is the 2025 spring advancing development forecast, which was as filed within the IRP. And then I want to focus more on the solid black line now is the updated 2026 advancing development forecast, which was the one that was referencing. So you can see with looking at those two data points, you can see approximately through 2027 to 2029, they're nearly identical. And then you can start to see the departure. And then when we have that conversation about in 2031, you can see a larger departure. And that's kind of eyeballing this. That's about what, 2 gigawatts departure in capacity. And then the other inflection point is that 2025 spring high load forecast, which was, in our view, not robustly analyzed from a risk-informed judgment. And now you can see that the updated forecast amount is going higher than that factor.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Okay, so regarding the line of questioning from Counsel for Sigfer, is the public staff's recommendation to approve the CPCN for the Smith facility in any way related to the ability to curtail large load customers?
No, it is not.
Okay. And Dr. Weaver, you mentioned that Duke is signing load faster than it can support generation. Is that your assessment or one that's also been presented to company leadership?
So that is based on, that is based on some documents we reviewed that are board meeting slides. So public staff redirect number 17 is board meeting slides from February 2025. And, oh, this is a confidential information, but
So we need to go into confidential setting then, or we,
We will need to go into confidential for this exhibit.
okay. John, if you could go ahead and cut the feed at this time. return us to non-confidential session. And at this time, I'll recognize Attorney Lure for any motions she may have.
Thank you. So first, to clarify the record, when I entered Exhibit Public Staff Hill Metz Weaver Redirect Exhibit 3, when I had it marked, I did not state that it was confidential. So I want to make that clear for the record. That's a confidential exhibit.
Absolutely, without objection, that will be duly noted as a part of the transcript.
Thank you. And then the public staff would ask that public staff potential cross exhibit 11, which is a confidential exhibit, be marked as public staff Hill Metz Weaver redirect exhibit 4.
Without objection, your motion is allowed.
Thank you. And that is all the redirect we have for these witnesses.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and move to questions from our commission staff. Mr. Metz, is there any information you'd like to bring to the commission's attention about why the public staff changed its position between the CPRP expert witness hearing and this proceeding regarding the need for this proposed facility?
Yes. As I stated briefly early on, is that when we were in the CPRP hearing, I believe we said we had the data for approximately 2.3 or 2.8 weeks. We're continuing to evaluate that and going through while actively working on many other items before this commission, as commission is aware. And based upon further review, we saw tightening reliability within the 2031. So while we do agree is that what we saw from an economic analysis is still correct, it's just the reliability element, which we were forecasting to the commission was becoming, is a concern. It is a concerning. Digging through the data, it's just brought it more into the light of how those concerns are becoming a reality.
If I could add to that, part of why we're so focused on 2031 is that, as I'm sure the commission will recall, part of the 2023 CPIRP order, the commission mandated that Duke have a 22% planning reserve margin in 2031. And so that specific point is we're concerned that Duke is moving towards violating that order.
Any further testimony from anyone else on that issue? Okay. Now, in rebuttal, Duke completed modeling requested by the public staff, which incorporated the most recent load forecast, business combination, and curtailment provisions. That modeling selected the proposed facility in 2030. How does the public staff interpret these results? I think you answered that question in part, but I want to give you a greater opportunity to elaborate further.
Sure. So we still have certain concerns. You know, we haven't had as much time to evaluate that modeling as we did the entire 2025 CPRP initial filing. Mr. Fahey testified in the 2025 CPRP hearing about his concerns with that specific load forecast and some of the issues. There's also a difference in the solar and battery resource availability limits that we haven't fully considered. So we still have concerns about that modeling, but we are finding that 2031 reserve margin being so close to it, and the build out that we showed in potential cross exhibit 3, there's significant build out over the NTAP in that exhibit. And so there's additional resources, you know, that would be required to meet that reserve margin that Duke isn't necessarily planning for. And they haven't conducted their own reliability verification process on that modeling. So we have a variety of concerns, but we found that that potential to violate the reserve margin in 2031 is particularly concerning. And so that's why we've changed our position.
All right. And does the public staff find Duke's proxy representation of ESA curtailments appropriate?
So I'm going back to So Mr. Thomas, I believe, it'd be Mr. Thomas or Mr. Michino, it would be more appropriate to answer that one within the confines because they would have done the further review. So is my understanding that how Duke modified the ESA provisions and looking kind of like a ELCC type distribution, those would be reasonable evaluations to continue to evaluate the impacts of the curtailments that were within the ESA contracts that are executed.
Okay. And on page 34 of your second corrected testimony, you'll indicate that unit-specific generation information from Servum was invalidated due to key errors affecting analysis of the proposed facility during extreme weather scenarios. Do you still have concerns regarding the lack of validated Servum modeling results? And if so, please explain why.
Yes, I would say we still have those concerns. We asked in rebuttal, or apologies, we asked through discovery if they had performed Servum analysis on the updated modeling that they performed in rebuttal, and they did not perform Servum analysis on those Encompass modeling runs. So we did not have anything to review. We were not able to make a further determination on that. I will add, though, as was discussed at length in the CPIRP hearing, the high load forecast, they did conduct Servum modeling on that on that portfolio, and that they showed that they did not meet the reliability requirements through Servum. I forget the exact numbers, Dr. Weaver, do you?
The high load sensitivity, I believe, had a Servum result of 0.304. And typically the threshold they're looking at is 0.165.
In that earlier exhibit that we brought up, you can see where the projected load forecast is now going higher. So it gets in a conversation on which year are you looking at Servum, whether or not that is a representative.
If I could add to what Mr. Hill was talking about, that specific issue that's brought up on page 34. As we've discussed in our review, we found that the unit wasn't being dispatched as much as we would have liked. And so we requested Servum data to see under those more extreme weather scenarios how the unit was performing. And the data that we received, we weren't able to use because of these issues. So there's sort of two separate evaluations of Servum. We haven't seen new unit specific data for the high load forecast, for the rebuttal load forecast. Duke has communicated that they're intending to fix those issues for the 2027 IRP, and I think we have confidence that they will do that. But we don't have any resolution at this time of new data that solves those issues.
Okay. Now, the public staff identify concerns relating to proposed facilities costs on a per kilowatt hour basis. Now, after incorporating gas infrastructure and transmission interconnection costs as done in Duke's rebuttal, does the public staff find the proposed facility costs more reasonable?
Can't ask a question on a commissioner's question, but can you explain a little bit more detail what you mean more reasonable, or the costs that we've included in our testimony align with the updated cost information provided by Duke, or are they reasonable for ratepayers to pay for?
Well, I believe within the confines of that question, there was originally the idea articulated that when public staff did its analysis, they did not take into consideration the additional gas infrastructure and transmission interconnection costs that would be involved if there was some other facility other than this particular CTN issue. Right.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So it is correct, we did not evaluate the gas transmission infrastructure that was required for other CTs. The Smith CT is unique in that it does not have any additional costs for gas infrastructure. There's already a pipeline to the facility in Richmond County, and they also have contracted gas available for delivery at the site. However, that being said, that has not normally been an aspect that Duke has presented as part of their cost analysis. This is the first time that they've incorporated those gas transmission costs into their dollar per kW analysis of the facility. And the exhibit, I believe it was identified as Hill, Metz, Weaver exhibit, redirect exhibit 4. It was potential cost exhibit 11. We in that exhibit, we present different costs, different dollar per kW costs under different assumptions. We present what we initially filed in our testimony, not including AFUDC, and then updating that to include AFUDC. And then we present what Duke presented in their rebuttal testimony with the effective dollar per kW. And then finally, we remove that gas infrastructure cost to compare the updates to our original testimony.
Thank you for providing that clarification. As I recall, when the Smith facility was built, there was a space left for an additional CT. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And it was an F-frame CT that was envisioned,
Yes, that is correct.
as opposed to some type of advanced class CT.
Yes, subject to check.
Yes, the little bit of history there is my understanding that the CT that was in that open bay actually got relocated to a different generation facility within Duke Energy Progress. So your observations are correct, but even that there was even a turbine, it just got moved up the road to a different location.
Thank you for that clarification. Let me see if there are other commissioner questions at this time. With nothing from Chair Brawley, Commissioner Tucker. We kind of do it in that base. Okay, Commissioner Vanderbar, go right ahead.
Okay. So a couple of things that just hit me right at the end there with, just to get one thing out of the way, are the preconditions for curtailment of the ESAs, are they similar to the preconditions for the curtailment in the modeling that you relied on when you did do that modeling? I mean, I'm trying to get an idea of what triggered curtailment and what the ESA says, and are they the same, roughly?
Yes, I'll try to explain that one. Again, Mr. Thomas would know this in more detail, so this is my understanding, is that we looked at the overall executed ESAs, and only the ESAs that had the curtailment provisions we modeled. So it wasn't, let's just say hypothetically, if we had 5 gigawatts of ESAs, we didn't put all 5 gigawatts in. My understanding is that, let's just call it 2 gigawatts had curtailment provisions. We mimicked what was in the contract provisions for that subset.
So the ESA didn't have some kind of preconditions for curtailment that were sort of like more severe. In other words, force majeure defined as, World War I-III or something, versus modeling that would trigger the curtailment, the conditions that would do that. I may not be an answerable question. I was just trying to see if it was.
So my colleagues know a little bit more about the actual ins and outs of those contracts, but borderline on make sure we don't go into confidential to say if the ESA had just reliability, again, generic reliability, we would look at the reserve margin as a proxy for that reliability. So when it goes back to the modeling, we said you have to put a constraint in it. So what we did is if here was here was the cost of unserved energy, and here's our normal programs that we implement for DSM. Again, it's not a DSM program, that we just oversimplified, kind of jumped way above the gray area of the DSM, got below the cost of unserved energy, and said, all right, here's your strike price. And then the model says, is it cheaper to call on this provision, or is it cheaper to build generation? And we believe through our judgment that we made it so far elevated, we wanted to see what the model would do and then evaluated whether that was a reasonable action. So
Okay.
for, yes.
And so then in rebuttal, Duke came up with this ELCC thing that it tied to a battery curve. I didn't understand how that makes any sense when the ELCC for a curtailment that's not going to change with penetration. And you're on a curve on the ELCC curve where you already got a lot of batteries. I mean, is that really an appropriate? I mean, I can see where people would be upset about the appearance of using the curtailment as a capacity resource, but I didn't understand the response. Do you have any thoughts about the use of that battery curve ELCC as a way of defining the ELCC for curtailment?
I'm going to look to my colleagues, and I'll just put the qualifier there that we're going to continue to have conversations with the utility. So I don't say what the exact value should be, but I'm going to look to my colleagues on that one.
Yeah, so I think tying it to the battery curve, I think was more of a short-term fix of this is how the system is set up and this is the best way we can handle it. That's my interpretation of what they did. But I think the goal is really to say, you know, this isn't a CT that you can just turn on and off whenever you want. There's limits in the contracts of when you can use it and for how long and how often. And in order to represent to the modeling software that it's not just like an on-off switch, you have to somehow derate that capacity. And so I don't know that we agree that the battery curve is the best way to tie it, but that was the mechanism that was available.
I agree with that. I just don't understand how there's a big leap, you know, let's go find a way to limit this. Okay, a battery ELCC curve. Anyway, the schedule, the concern about scheduling, you know, construction, you know, this isn't a nuclear plant. It's not even advanced CC. This is an aging F-class CT. And when I read, you know, Duke's discussion, you know, they pointed out that this is a very convenient addition to the Smith facility because of a lot of reasons, the infrastructure, et cetera. I mean, are we really in that much of a rush because we're worried about being able to get an F-class simple cycle installed?
So there's a few points, and I can't speculate to Duke's understanding, but I think there is a connection to when we were talking about the Person County CC 1 and 2, and making sure that there was a discussion with the commission on validation of other resources. So part of our diligence in those CPCN proceedings was leaning on the utility of saying, why aren't we exploring these other facilities? So whether or not Duke was doing it before or did it based upon our conversations, they were the best people to answer that one. But that's how I see how this has came out, is that if there's availability and it has a relative lower cost to ratepayers, this will be a great idea. But when we were, from my view of when these decisions are being made, it is not the reality of how fast Duke is signing load. So what may have been great intentions, and if I sat 2 years ago and I came before this commission and says, give me the cost of an advanced class turbine versus an F-frame, I would say that F-frame is more likely than not going to be cheaper on a $1 per kW standpoint.
But I meant speed. I mean, I'll get the cost just a second, but the speed, I mean, so that, my point is that, and you brought it up again, is this load forecasting. And this whole thing we're doing, to me, seems like a rush to the altar. I mean, we're deciding things based on things that haven't been decided on. And one of the biggest is the load forecast. I mean, you point to amendments to what I'll call IRP filings. Well, those haven't been approved. I mean, they may be compelling, but we're waiting for a decision on that. And yet now we're being asked to make decisions on that, which to me is like cart before the horse. There's also, you know, this was a contingent CT in the existing IRP, if I'm not mistaken. There were two combustion turbines at Buck that were indicated And we haven't even made a decision on those yet. And then, you know, as part of the difficulty that I have is that in this filing, the date of the need depends on a lot of things, load forecast, but it also depends on the coal retirement schedule, that hasn't been approved. There's a transmission bottleneck in this case. Well, I don't even know, as lousy a value as we're going to get out of this CT, and you brought it up, if I'm not mistaken, 61% of the total capacity is going to be used in the first 3 years. Well, in the first 2 years of those, I don't even think you've got enough transmission to fully take advantage of the capacity.
Commissioner Vandenberg, if you could get to the question.
Well, the question is that we don't have, there are a lot of things that we're being asked to assume for a project that looks to me like a stranded resource out of the gate. And so, you know, well, let me ask you a couple questions along those lines. I did write those down.
Yeah, we want to focus on the.
Well, I'm
questions, sir.
focusing on.
I know, and I understand your,
which is a
the depth of your thoughts and concerns, and I
It's a
respect
very,
that,
very
yeah.
flimsy, and that's why I'm trying to sort of fill that in here, but so we talked about the fact that the load forecast is almost a tail wagging the dog. There's also, you would agree with that? I mean, that's the reason that you gave just a minute ago for changing your position. Is that right?
That is one of the elements that is correct, Commissioner.
And that load forecast has not been approved yet by this commission. Is that right?
That is my understanding, yes.
So, and similarly, the coal retirement schedule at least affected it within the year that it was indicated. Do you agree with that?
Yes, and I believe the most tangential generation plant would be Mayo, and the Mayo retirement date is 2031, if I'm not mistaken.
Subject to check, I believe.
But is that, again, those retirement schedules may change based on the IRP. Do you agree with that?
Yes, but to the extent that the core retirement dates are moved out, this resource in particular is coming in right before. Like if we use Mayo as that example, and if Mayo slides out to 2035, and if Mayo was 2031, 2032, if we're looking at 2030, from only an isolation of the reserve margin, then that's where we're looking at it. But yes, to looking at the overall economics, I would agree with you, Commissioner, that you need to consider in the coal plant retirements.
And then finally, you know, even if we assumed the need, which again, I'm not saying it's not needed. I don't know how we can make that decision with the facts we have in front of us. Was there a facility level showing that Smith and I'm talking about under 62-110.1E, that this facility was the least cost alternative? In other words, and you talked about the selection universe was somewhat limited, but was there an analysis showing that this was cheaper, for example, than battery? Because battery has a lifetime of about 10 years, which is what your need is, not 35 years. So did I miss in the submittal a demonstration that, for example, battery wouldn't be as reliable or more reliable and cheaper than this combustion turbine? Did I miss that?
So I have a couple points to make there. So no, sir, I don't think you missed anything. We've asked Duke multiple times what alternatives they considered. And again, they stated that there were no other alternatives that could be completed by the 2030 date. The one thing about batteries, though, is you need excess energy to charge the batteries. And from what we're seeing in the modeling, there's nothing else there. The maximum solar is being selected. The maximum gas is being selected. There is nothing else available that even if we had more batteries, we would be able to charge them to meet this need.
So I'm a little confused on that last one. I thought this was about capacity, not energy.
So, I mean, so there's a couple elements. So if you look at it from function of the reserve margin, that'd be correct. But to the extent that if the system is already starved for energy, and that's what we're seeing, and And that's what what the other conversation that we had in confidential session also pointed to, is that in order to build an alternative solution, now you also have to get additional resources when they're already being maxed out.
I guess I'll have to take your word for that. But to your point, is that demonstration in somewhere where I can, in the record right now, that demonstration that battery isn't the alternative as required under 62-110?
I believe, and you would have to ask Duke's witnesses to confirm, but I believe they point to the CPIRP to demonstrate the cost effectiveness of least cost portfolio.
Well, that hasn't been approved. So thank you very much.
May I
All right, Commissioner.
say?
Oh, excuse, go ahead, Dr. Weaver. Did you want to?
I just, Commissioner Vandervaart, you were asking about this speed to power issue and, you know, this sort of pace that we're recommending this approval because we need it soon, and this is our only option. The public staff has also discussed additional protections that could be put in place that might help mitigate some of those concerns. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just suggest there's the potential for a cost cap, for some kind of penalty if the facility is delayed. There's potential to, you know, not allow this to be included in the MYRP or CWIP to reduce, you know, ratepayer risk. So I just want to put out there that there are some additional mechanisms that the commission could consider that would help reduce the risk and the costs associated with the facility from the perspective of ratepayers.
Just to make clear, from years 10 through 35, are the ratepayers going to get their money's worth out of this CT?
So from our review, if I can go back in time, I would build a different resource.
Me too. Me too.
But here we are. So the only thing I can glean from it is that this resource will count towards the ultimate reserve margin that is out in the future years. But take that value for what it's worth.
And that's not a statutory value. We could amend that based on what's going on. I mean, we're sitting in 2026 right now trying to figure out 2031 type needs, and we haven't even approved the IRPs. But thank you very much.
All right, Commissioner Tucker and.
Thank you, Commissioner McKissick. If I waiver any on my questions that are not pointed towards the Smith CT, if you let me know, I appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely. And we're trying to stay away from confidential information as well.
Right. I don't have any confidential information to my knowledge. In my questions, Dr. Weaver mentioned, I believe, that you have not had sufficient time to look at all the parameters. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, we've completed additional reviews since the 2025 CPRP, but as Mr. Metz stated, like we've only had this information for about a month, so there's more that we could review.
And if I could just add to that very briefly, Commissioner Tucker, the original CPIRP filing we had from October through March to review, and we've had about 4 weeks, as Dr. Weaver stated, on this new modeling.
Okay. You know, when I was somewhat surprised when you were against it and then you became for it, is that totally based on Duke's modeling?
I'd say one, it's based upon Duke's modeling, but two, it's taking a step back and using our engineering judgment on saying, okay, there is a lot of, if you take Duke's word at their load forecast, I think that's an important caveat. If you look at what needs to be built by 2031 and the magnitude or assumptions are there, that risk is much larger than I would recommend, and therefore we believe it is reasonable. If the load forecast is true, we believe it's reasonable to start chipping away at that vulnerability that is likely to occur at 2031.
Okay. How do you come from using the word staggering and expensive to getting in agreement with Duke on this particular generation project? Staggering and expensive. And if I heard you correctly, not a good deal for ratepayers in your mind at all. Can you expound on that, please?
Yes, the costs are staggering and very expensive. This is $500 million. We don't take that lightly. But when forced that if you're seeing the potential other resources that one have to be accelerated to 2031 that aren't even being talked about, we briefly mentioned, and all the other generation resources that have to come online, and we don't have any other delays in those resources, we are banking on a plan of perfection, and that has me very nervous, especially when we see the realities that are happening today, as the commission is very well aware of the confidential weekly reserves that we have and the grid conditions that we have to work with the system that we have, even where we're at, for a few more years before we start getting incremental generation added online. And even then, this resource is just, it's a little. So as I stated earlier, it's because Duke hasn't put forward an alternative that actually can be implemented in a timeline to mitigate that reliability concern that we're seeing. We are now, for lack of a better word, stuck with this resource. And then that's why we asked for the conditions, and as well as if the commission would implement any other ratepayer protections. I mean, going further here live on the stand is saying, okay, well, if this resource from an energy standpoint was less efficient, well, that would be a cost disallowance that we would need the commission's approval for in fuel. And that could live for the life of the asset.
Okay. All right, well, I respect you, the panel and you, and what you decision has been made based on that modeling. Let me, the reason for the Smith CT, in docket E2 sub 1395, public staff potential cross exhibit 2, it's the testimony of Stillman and Tate and Pasty. And the way I look at this graph, they say between now and 2035 is going to be a need for 43,000 megawatts in that graph. The need for the CT is part of the overall cast of generation facilities. So are we building this Smith CT and the others to meet data center load only for the most part? Because let me just caveat that Mr. Stillman said in his statement, I believe, that in the queue, in the ESA queue that's been briefly mentioned, 70% of those are data centers and the rest are industrial commercial loads that are there. So this CT is part of the whole plan to build, and we're building toward data centers and utilizing this CT to be able to address that 43,000 megawatts that's coming at us by 2035. Is that a fair statement or not?
If I can put a couple of qualifiers on there, and
Sure.
apologies, is that
Sure, no problem.
is Mr. Public Staff Witness Fahey, as we talked about in the CPRP hearing,
Right.
but I wouldn't get as latched on to that 43 gigawatts. There's a degree of speculation that is in the tail end. If the further you go out in a time, the more uncertainty that exists. So when we're looking at whatever resource needs to be built, whether it's 2030 or 2035, it is the system load, and the system gets economically selected based upon the aggregate of resources in those shapes. So I wouldn't agree that it's built but for a particular customer, but any customers, including the existing customer base, all contribute to the need for the evaluation of additional capacity. And to the extent that when this goes back into our modeling analysis and the CPRP is that, well, Smith, correct me if I'm wrong, it can only be selected, it was either 2030 or 2031.
That's correct.
And so as Mr. Michna, Public Staff Witness Michna, talked about in his testimony, it was a funneling effect. Is that there's certain items that Duke put into the model which would limit the outcomes that could be selected. In our review, Smith was one of those.
Okay. Oh, just one other question, and this may be for should be directed at Duke, but I guess I can ask you guys, you know about it. For my own edification, the cluster study, the Rayford Richmond 230, the Laurinburg Richmond 230, the Rayford Richmond 230, again, tell me what transmission is going to have to take place, and has there been an estimated cost presented to public staff in that? I can't remember.
Yes, I can talk to that a little bit.
So we're talking about $500 million plus right now.
Yes.
So the plus, if you could, please.
Mm-hmm. So $500 million is for the the asset itself, and without going into confidential, there is AFUDC included as well, and then that is on top of the $500 million. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Weaver, but the transmission component is included within that $500 million. They included that as part of their $500 million estimate, and AFUDC is on top of that.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact number. The transmission piece of it is, it's in the cost information that Duke has provided, and whether or not you include all these factors, I think $500 million is a good rough estimate.
Okay.
And to speak a little bit more to transmission, there is one required transmission upgrade to be able to successfully interconnect this facility. I forget the name.
Is that number in the $500 million?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Okay.
And it's apologies. The original when we were reviewing the documentation, the phase 1 study showed that facility, that transmission facility, wouldn't be online in time, but they've since updated that. They should be able to bring that interconnection facility online. They've also went ahead and requested provisional interconnection service to ensure that even if that interconnection is not built in time, they can still connect Smith and dispatch it as long as there's available capacity on the transmission system.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that. That's all the questions I have, sir.
All right, and I guess 1 or 2 quick follow-ups on what Commissioner Tucker was asking. I believe based upon documents I saw and reviewed, the network upgrade costs are now anticipated to cost less than what was originally estimated when they did the phase 1 report. Is that correct? And I don't want to get into any specific numbers, but to the tune of about 1/6 or so, I might say, based upon numbers I saw.
Subject to check. Yes, I'm not sure on the 1/6 number. I do
Yeah,
know
and
that
that-
the
yeah, and-
costs have decreased.
And I'm not doing my fractions right now. I'm looking at the actual number I notated. And the time frame, I think it's now been reduced down to 33 months as opposed to 5.5 years, which is what public staff had concerns about originally. Is that correct?
Subject to check. Yes, that is that sounds correct.
Okay. I think we're ready to move on to questions on commissioner questions.
No questions here. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple. First, just for clarification, Presiding Commissioner McKissick, Council for Public Staff identified several exhibits during redirect, and I believe they were marked, but it wasn't clear to me whether they were actually entered into the record. Just for clarification.
For purposes of clarification, you want to go ahead and make the motion, and I thought it had been introduced and marked and identified, but perhaps there's an omission, so let's go ahead and make sure that we clarify any omission that occurred.
Yes, I believe I had marked them for identification, but not yet moved for them to be entered into the record. I can do so at this time, or I can wait until our panel's finished.
You can go ahead and do it at this time to make sure it doesn't get omitted.
Thank you. So at this time, we would move public staff Hill, Metz, Weaver, redirect exhibits 1 and 2, and confidential public staff Hill, Metz, Weaver, redirect exhibits 3 and 4 into the record.
Without objection, your motion.
I'm sorry. We actually do have an objection to
Okay.
that. And that's the reason I asked for clarification. So I believe one of the public staff's exhibits was potential redirect exhibit 11, which we marked as, I'm sorry, what, do you recall what we marked that as?
So if you're referring to potential cross exhibit 11, that was our redirect exhibit 4.
I'm sorry, redirect exhibit 17, the confidential.
Oh.
Yeah,
You're referring to the confidential one
yes.
that you
yeah.
voiced objection to from the
Thank you,
outset.
thank you. Yeah, so DEP would object on the basis that we do believe that that exhibit was beyond the scope of the cross-examination that was conducted by counsel for SIGFUR. It elicited multiple questions and testimony that were related to general resource planning items and not specific to this facility. So we would object to the introduction of that confidential exhibit into the record.
Your objection is overruled. It's admitted into the record.
Thank you.
Right. And questions on commissioner questions? Are there any?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. So for Mr. Hill, do you have exhibit 3 to DEP's application, CPCN application in front of you?
Just a moment, I believe I do. If I don't, I'm sure we have it.
Okay.
Yes, I've got it in front of me now.
Okay. When you have a second, would you mind turning to table 3.4 in exhibit 3?
I'm there.
Okay. Would you agree that that table provides, and I know that information in that table has been marked confidential, so we'll try to avoid listing any specific confidential information. But would you agree that that table provides an itemization of costs related to gas pipeline, interstate firm transportation?
Yes, I do that. See that as one of the categories in that table.
Okay. Mr. Hill, have you reviewed any of Duke Energy Progress or Duke Energy Carolina's previous CPCN applications?
Yes, I have. I have not. I will say that I have not reviewed a. Apologies. Yes, I have reviewed Duke Energy and Duke Energy Progress and Duke Energy Carolina CPCN applications.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that the items listed in table 3.4 have appeared in previous applications, CPCN applications that you've reviewed, that DEP and DEC have submitted in the recent past, maybe within the last 2 or 3 years?
Yes, the table does look familiar to others that I've seen in prior CPCN applications.
Okay, so would you agree then that in previous CPCN applications, both DEP and DEC have included in their respective exhibit 3s to their CPCN application, the gas infrastructure costs similar to how they are presented in this table?
Yes, yes, I agree with that.
Okay. And subject to check, would you agree that those gas and pipeline infrastructure costs provided in the previous CPCN applications have been significantly higher than the figures that are shown, and again, without eliciting confidential information, than the figures that are shown in this table 3.4?
So, if I may, yeah, I guess I can't say the dollar value, but anything greater than that dollar value would be higher.
Okay, all right, so we're on the same page. And does the public staff find that those figures meaningful in its evaluation of the total cost of the facility?
Yes, that is an aspect that we take into account.
Okay. And given that those costs have been presented in previous CPCN applications and that the tables have been presented in those filings, is it fair to say that the information related to gas costs has always been available for the public staff to evaluate when it's evaluating the cost of a unit that's being presented for consideration in a CPCN application?
Yes, I would agree with that. And if it's not in the exhibits, we will ask for that information through discovery.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Weaver, I have a question for you as well. I believe you said that the public staff had only 4 weeks to review and consider the impacts of the updated spring 2026 load forecast. Was that your testimony?
My understanding is that we received the associated modeling files at the end of May.
Okay. Would you agree that Duke included in the originally filed 2025 CPIRP, which was filed October 1st of 2025, a high load sensitivity?
Yes, there was a high load sensitivity in the 2025 CPIRP.
And
But that overall high load sensitivity, again, as we talked about previously before, and as I stated earlier, it was not robustly analyzed. Even I think Duke, subject to check, only performed or Mr. Mitchell would know in more detail, but there was next to no detailed analysis relative to the advancing forecast development.
would it be fair to say that the high load sensitivity represents or closely approximates the spring 2026 load forecast? Would you agree with that?
At the intersection point on that graph that we looked at before, yes, but as the concerns that we had with the high load forecast is that we're having, as Dr. Weaver mentioned before, was failures on the serve and run. So we had grave concerns about the reliability impacts of that high load forecast.
Okay, but you would agree with me that the public staff did have available to it as of October 1st, 2025, the high load sensitivity, correct?
So we had access to the high load sensitivity, but I think as Mr. Metz is getting at, in that 2025 CPIRP, Duke filed dozens of modeling sensitivities related to the advancing development forecast. And so that gives us a much better understanding of the potential consequences, the potential range of outcomes, depending on a variety of factors. And so with only those two high load sensitivity runs or the two rebuttal load runs that we were provided, it's just a lot less information to go off of. And so we can't analyze that as in-depthly as when we're provided a much broader range of sensitivities.
Thank you. Could the public staff have modeled the high load sensitivity when it was provided on October 1st of 2025?
Theoretically, yes. But again, from my view, is look at, and based upon the analysis or the lack of analysis that Duke performed while I was failing CERVM, that high load forecast was illusory. I mean, it was out there to be out there, and we could have evaluated it much more detail, but based upon what we were seeing, there was no way that the system could be built like that. Even how you're building the system like that, you're failing reliability. So if Duke's own model was failing reliability, why do I want to invest time in digging into this further when Duke wasn't even advanced or was using that as the rationale of their plan?
Did Duke indicate to the public staff, either in its filing or informally, that the public staff should not model the high load sensitivity?
Not that I'm aware of.
So the public staff could have modeled it if it had wanted to. Is that fair?
We had that data available to us, and yes, we
Okay.
could have modeled using the high load forecast. But as Mr. Metz was stating, we have limited time and resources, and we focused on what was presented to us from Duke, and the majority of their modeling was based on the advancing development load. And so that's where we focused our time and our energy.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
All right, we'll go ahead and entertain the motions related to any other exhibits or testimony at this time.
I think we've answered everything.
Got everything into the record? Very good. This panel is excused. We're going to take a 5-minute break before we bring in Duke for rebuttal. Then we're going to wind things up. Thank you. All right, gentlemen, I will remind you that you continue to be under oath. And with that, we will go ahead and turn over to Duke.
Thank you, Presiding Commissioner McKissick. Mr. Quinto, Mr. Browning, and Mr. Donishad, you've been called back to the stand. Let's start with Mr. Quinto. Mr. Quinto, are you the same Michael Quinto that previously appeared in this proceeding as a part of the company's direct case?
Yes.
And did you cause to be pre-filed in this docket rebuttal testimony consisting of 45 pages and 2 exhibits?
Yes.
Do you have any changes to your rebuttal testimony at this time?
No.
If I were to ask you the same questions today that appear in your pre-filed rebuttal testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Your rebuttal testimony includes an exhibit containing the company's confidential rebuttal testimony filed in the 2025-2026 CPIRP proceeding in docket number E-100 sub 207, which you incorporated by reference, but otherwise, no additional confidential information is included in your testimony. Is that correct?
Correct.
And did you also cause to be pre-filed a summary of your rebuttal testimony with the commission?
Yes.
Presiding Commissioner McKissick, I would ask that Mr. Quinto's pre-filed rebuttal testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, as well as a summary of Mr. Quinto's rebuttal testimony. I would also ask that Mr. Quinto's 2 rebuttal exhibits be pre-marked for identification and accepted into the record at this time.
Without objection, your motion is allowed.
Thank you. Turning to Mr. Browning and Mr. Donishad. Mr. Browning, are you the same Andrew Browning that previously appeared in this proceeding as part of the company's direct case?
Yes.
And Mr. Donishad, are you the same Daniel Donishad that previously appeared in this proceeding as a part of the company's direct case?
Yes.
And Mr. Donishad, did the panel consisting of yourself and Mr. Browning cause to be pre-filed in this docket rebuttal testimony consisting of 27 pages and 3 exhibits?
Yes.
Do you have any changes to the panel's rebuttal testimony at this time?
No.
If I were to ask you the same questions today that appear in your pre-filed rebuttal testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Your rebuttal testimony includes confidential information, correct?
That is correct.
And one of your 3 exhibits also includes confidential information, correct?
Yes.
Did you also pre-file a summary of the panel's rebuttal testimony with the commission?
Yes.
Presiding Commissioner McKissick, I would ask that the panel testimony of Mr. Browning and Mr. Donishad, which was pre-filed as rebuttal testimony, be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, as well as a summary of Mr. Browning and Mr. Donishad's rebuttal testimony. I would also ask that the panel's 3 rebuttal exhibits be pre-marked for identification and accepted into the record at this time.
Without objection, your motion is allowed.
Thank you. The panel consisting of Mr. Quinto, Mr. Browning, and Mr. Donishad is now available for questions from the parties and commission on their pre-filed rebuttal testimony.
Thank you. I understand Sickford does not have any cross. We'll recognize public staff.
Thank you, Presiding Commissioner. Good afternoon, panel. How are y'all?
Good.
Good. Thank you.
Good. I wanted to ask you about your rebuttal testimony, of course, in particular, the concerns that y'all express to the public staff's recommendations relating to cost overruns and construction delays, and that's on your testimony, pages 24, 25, 26, and 27. Y'all see that, Mr. Donishad and Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Okay. And I suppose I've just got, and were y'all here during the testimony earlier of public staff witnesses?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I think this is a general question for you. You've heard concerns then earlier on about the possibility of a stranded asset, about the limited potential use of this asset. And you're also aware, because your testimony touches on it, the 2 concerns, the 2 recommendations that the public staff had to try to keep an eye on the cost and the timing of this. So other than, and you note the statutes and the rules that could provide for the company raising its hand to come in on its own volition, or the commission, not hauling you in, but we're bringing you in. Why wouldn't you want to have these safeguards that protect customers from cost overruns and construction delays?
I would say those additional measures are duplicative of existing measures that we're already living up to.
Okay, but and you also, I suppose, in your testimony, you characterize it as inefficient. But wouldn't it be inefficient for us to have to get back together at some future date here, bring the lawyers in, all the fees, et cetera? Why wouldn't we want to put those? Isn't it inefficient? It would be inefficient if you had cost overruns and construction delays in general, right? But that would be inefficient in and of itself, wouldn't it?
My understanding is if we're following quarterly construction updates, that information would be made available and we would have to address questions about it once it's submitted.
I don't believe I have any additional questions.
No questions from.
Oh, okay. Very good. No additional questions. Well, we're going to go ahead with our commission staff questions. And of course, Mr. Quinto, the public staff expressed concern relating to proposed facilities' low utilization, citing low capacity factors, and dispatch within Encompass modeling when compared to existing CT resources at the Smith site. It's kind of a two-part question. How does Duke weigh concerns that this resource may be on the margin of economic selection in the event near-term load does not fully materialize?
Well, first of all, Commission, I don't believe that this resource is necessarily on the margin. Today, as we're sitting here, the especially hot day as well, we're right at the edge of our previous target for reliability of 17%. We're going to continue to have load growth in the future, but even starting from our spot today, we are short of that commission-approved 22% reserve margin. So we need capacity on the system to begin with, just to maintain the level of reliability that we saw in the 2023 resource plan. Part of that is part of that 22% reserve margin is resources that are specifically targeted to run a very limited amount of time on the system. That 22% is going to be the last resources there are only going to run a very limited amount of time, but they're going to be critical for maintaining reliability of the system in event that you have extreme weather, especially on those cold winter mornings. When this a resource like this, the proposed facility, can be dispatched and run for several days at a time to be able to provide that reliability. So it's critically needed to increase our reserve margins today. It's needed to help meet that future load growth that we do have on the system and meet our obligation to serve all the customers on our system, as Mr. Metz discussed in the last panel, of the collective of our growth and load over time. And then as we go out into the future, this resource may be leaned on more for energy in the near term, but over the long term, it's going to continue to provide that peaking capacity that will is a good deal for customers. It has all the efficiencies that were discussed with the public staff of great siting location, advantageous natural gas delivery, and updated transmission circumstances, which make it a very favorable site. So given the role of this resource in the long term, it's going to continue to provide value to the system. Dr. Weaver from the public staff mentioned value of this resource. The value of this resource is its ability to be dispatched on those severe winter days and be able to run and provide reliability to the system. It's not necessarily to operate all throughout the year. That's the differentiation between peaking resources and intermediate resources. We do have a lot of those energy resources that are coming online. We're contemplating in the 25 IRP additional combined cycles, and then not long after that, additional solar and nuclear resources, which are going to help provide that energy to the system. So this is a asset that's uniquely positioned to be able to provide near-term reliability And then over the long term, as we get incremental energy resources on the system, it's going to continue to provide that reliability and offset the need for future resources. So hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you. Now, pursuant to the public staff's testimony, servo modeling was not done for the Encompass run incorporating the newest load forecasts, business combination, and proxy curtailments. Giving this modeling estimates of system reliability, why was this not done?
Yeah, well, we did for the public staff and for our own information was run that servo modeling on our high load portfolio. We believe that that high load portfolio is a good approximation for the updated load forecast. Just a reminder that that was developed by simply changing out our economic development assumptions to come up with a projection to look out into the future. If you just change that out, how would it influence? So and it ended up lining up very well with the high load forecast. So we thought running it with the detailed information that we had with the high load portfolio that was already developed is a suitable proxy for reliability on a longer term basis with respect to this increased load forecast. I would like to take the opportunity to provide some context around that servo analysis. So on a unadjusted basis, the public staff witnesses described the reliability metrics as a 0.3, and that's correct. The target for our reliability verification is 0.165, and so when we compare that, we look at that and say, yes, that's outside of the parameters of our reliable system. What it does is help reinforce that the resources that we've laid out in our NTAP and the CPIRP represent a minimum number of resources. Now, in addition to the reliability verification on an unadjusted basis for that high load portfolio, we also looked at what are the mitigation options to that. And the first one we looked at was what happens when you include these curtailment provisions without adding any other resources to the system. If you just include the curtailment provisions that we have, factor those into the model, it drops the loss of load expectation in that portfolio from a 0.3 down to a 0.18. So just outside of the 0.165 threshold that we have for our reliability verification process. So without changing any other resources and leaning on those curtailment provisions in the large load ESAs, we get fairly close to that maintaining reliable system threshold that we have in reliability verification. In addition, if you were to say, we don't necessarily want to lean on those curtailment provisions, looking at incremental resources, which may be executable at the very end of our current NTAP or just outside of our NTAP, we have options such as adding 2 additional CTs got us within the reliability threshold in the 2035 timeframe. So to me, this underscores that we need the resources that are in our NTAP today, including the proposed facility. We do have some additional work to do to meet this incremental load growth, and we're going to continue to work on what are those executable options to maintain reliability. But we do have mitigating options and some time to continue to figure that out on a longer term basis.
Thank you. Now, on page 44, lines 17 through 20 of your rebuttal testimony, while discussing hydrogen operation of the proposed facility, you state that given the proposed facility's long-term role in the portfolio, the proposed facility represents a minimal impact to potential carbon emissions. Could you explain in greater detail what is meant by long-term role in this testimony?
Yes, absolutely. This ties back to the public staff's drawing attention to the limited operations of the proposed facility come 2050. So because this is a peaking resource and over time we get more energy assets onto the system, it will continue to serve that peaking role, which means that it will be utilized less, but in those most critical times from a extreme winter weather or extreme hot heat like we have today. So overall, its amount of operations and therefore emissions is going to be relatively small for the system. So when we look at whether it's for solving for carbon neutrality by 2050, if it's utilization of hydrogen or if it's running this facility and utilizing carbon offsets as allowable under 62.110.9, or if it's looking at it as purely a reliability resource that we only run in case of emergency as allowable under the same statute, that this resource is going to result in minimal impact in terms of CO2 emissions or other mitigating options that we will assess on an economic basis to best meet that carbon neutrality by 2050.
Now, despite this being a 35-year resource, did Duke not expect to dispatch this facility in 2050?
I would say our load forecasts that we represent in our planning processes are weather normal. So under a weather normal load forecast, I would not expect to run a lot of my peaking units very often. It depends on what your mix of resources are over time, how much load you overall have to serve. If I have a 50% system load factor compared to a 60% load factor, I may have a different mix of resources and utilization may be a little different. But overall, those peaking resources are going to continue to be those resources that you don't expect to want to run much or have to run much, but you may have to run them. But they're going to be better than the alternative, which are reliability impacts or potentially very expensive, if available, market purchases on leaning in our neighbors. And I know that's becoming a point of continued, a topic of continued concern, or something that we'll continue to look at in resource adequacy studies, is how much can we actually rely on our neighbors to be able to provide neighbor assistance during reliability events.
Now, in the 2025 DICE's Phase 2 report, the lead time for the proposed facilities interconnection has dropped from 66 months to 33 months. Could you explain what caused this drop and how certain this timeline is now that the 2025 DICE's is beyond Phase 2?
Yes, I can touch on that. I'm not a transmission expert, but I know there was just a series of projects that were allocated towards serving Smith. And, you know, with DICE's, with Phase 1, there's a lot of projects in, and then Phase 1 results are issued, and then people that have the projects, they can either stay in or they can drop out. So there's always some dropout between Phase 1 and Phase 2. Therefore, there's less improvements needed usually in a Phase 2. So, but, you know, our, the transmission planning group had relooked at things, and basically with the Phase 2, cut that key, that long lead project in half from 66 months to 33 months. So that meets that in-service date of January 2030. We also did enter a provisional service just in case, kind of belts and suspenders thing, in case that facility was not ready, but all indications are that we should be ready to go for the January 2030 peak.
So it's not anticipated the provisional service would be needed at this time?
We put in for it, but we probably won't need it if everything stays on course.
Thank you for that clarification. The company conducted modeling on behalf of the public staffs, incorporating the updated 2026 Advancing Development Load Forecast, business combination, and large load curtailments as firm capacity. The next few questions are about that modeling. The first being, in your rebuttal testimony, does page 36, lines 5 through 11 indicate that large load curtailments were modeled with an ELCC and ELCC curve equivalent to 4-hour batteries?
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner.
Okay. And how were other components of ESA provisions modeled as an annual or daily limits?
So in the Encompass modeling, the way that we incorporated these curtailment provisions, and I would like to clarify, we did modeling with assuming these curtailment provisions contribute to firm capacity in planning the system, and then without. So we did it both ways. And
both
looked
ways,
at the need for the proposed facility, specifically with respect to that sensitivity. With respect to including them, we recognized that the operational limitations of curtailment provisions, so they have a maximum number of hours per year of 50, 6 hours per event. And so those limitations represent a limited ability for it to provide reliability for the system, effectively reducing those customers' load to be able to maintain the reliability of the rest of the system. So we reflected that from a rather than the granular number of dispatch hour events, just looking at 50 hours per year over 8,760, the total hours in a year, converted that to a effective capacity factor, how much it could be utilized, and factor that. That's the same way that the public staff incorporated it into their CPIRP modeling. So we thought that that was a reasonable way to reflect the operational constraints. Again, what I want to emphasize is that those are again, being the last type of resource in the system, they're not meant to be utilized often. So they are there for planning capacity. One of the other differences is we also assumed that these curtailment provisions would roll off after 5 years, as generally specified in the ESAs for these contracts, that these customers in general don't want to be curtailed. They want firm service. So that takes us to the other point, which is without these, our modeling without the large load curtailment reflects being able to serve these customers on a firm basis as fast as we can, provide reliability and rely less on these operationally limited curtailment provisions compared to resources that can provide long runtime dispatchable anytime you really need them, subject to outages, reliability for the system. So we continue to believe that, we're going to use those ESA curtailment provisions as an additional layer of operational reliability for the system as we're pursuing these resources to provide that firm, reliable capacity for the system. And however, if you were to include them, that because of the operational constraints of them, you can't necessarily account for them on a one-to-one basis. Say, if the peak was longer than expected, longer than the operational curtailment provisions allow, or they would be called on more often than the 50 hours for over the course of a year. So for those reasons, we did take a discount or an ELCC adjusted firm capacity accounting. Witness Thomas in the CPIRP for the public staff, didn't necessarily dispute this. He said, yes, effectively, it makes sense that there's some ELCC adjustment. We agree with him that we weren't trying to be precise on this is the exact way that we should do it or it should be done. But we think it provides a better representation of an energy limited, operationally limited reliability metric compared to counting them as 100% of their nameplate reduction as firm capacity.
And how does the model cost of ESA curtailment compare to the cost of battery energy storage and Encompass?
Yep. So we do not assign any costs for the curtailment provisions. They are when they are modeled in our model, it's just extra capacity that's there to meet the planning reserve margin. When we're talking about dispatch, so how often does that resource get used? Our IRP models use sophisticated algorithms to determine how to operate the system on a least cost basis. So starting units efficiently, operating them, understanding what the startup shutdown costs are. So when taking into consideration operations of a battery, it's looking for low cost energy on the system to be able to move that to high cost energy on the system and be able to offset that. So it's going to use the battery a lot more over time. It is a net load to the system because of the round trip efficiency. You lose some of that energy moving it from the low cost periods to the high cost periods. But in general, those are going to be used a lot more on just a everyday operation of the system than the curtailment provisions, which would really be saved. I think Witness Metz did a good job describing, they effectively priced when this curtailment provision would be used so that all the other resources on the system would be used first before getting into the curtailment provisions and just before we would show energy not served on the system.
Was servant modeling conducted on this portfolio? And if so, what were the results with respect to proposed facility dispatch and system LOLE?
This specific modeling that was presented in my rebuttal testimony was not run through the servo modeling as kind of previously discussed. Again, the high load we think serves as an adequate proxy at this time. The operational specifics on a detailed unit basis is something that we appreciate the public staff helping us with and understanding some of the issues that we had with respect to that, and it is something that we're addressing as we go into our next planning cycle and being able to work with the vendor of Servum to understand and help make improvements in terms of individual unit dispatch. However, from an overall system perspective, we still believe that it provides a good representation or a accurate representation of reliability on the system. There may just be some slight discrepancies on how, on an 8760 basis, how some resources were getting dispatched.
All right. Now, during the Marshall CT cost review proceeding earlier this year, the commission saw significant unit cost increases because of adjusted EPC contractor prices. In this proceeding, the rebuttal testimony has preliminarily indicated that EPC contractor prices will instead decrease. Has any additional information related to this arisen since your rebuttal testimony was filed?
No, sir.
Okay. Let me see if there are any other questions from commissioners. Commissioner Tucker.
And I'll try to make this quick. Quinto, did I hear from public staff that the runtime on the Smith CT will be about 4% of its capacity life? Is that right?
I think the public staff was mentioning the capacity factor of the Smith CT was expected to run for about 10 years in our IRP models relative, I think what we're referring to is a 35-year asset life.
Okay.
And that ties back to the discussion I had with Commissioner McKissick with respect to our IRP models, again, being weather normal load forecast. So when we get energy resources on the system that can provide that round-the-clock energy that's really needed for the system on a go-forward basis, that roles such as the one for the proposed facility is really going to be what it's intended to do, which is a peaking resource capacity. And under a weather normal load forecast where we don't have severe winter extreme weather events or summer events like we're in kind of today, we would expect those resources to run very little in our models from a baseline perspective.
Do you consider curtailment as a generating resource?
It's certainly not a generating resource. It is a operational way to reduce the load on the system to be able to allow the rest of our resources to serve the rest of the system. Now, we don't necessarily want to rely on that. It's, again, operationally limited. It also is not the desire of these customers or customers for the most part, to be interrupted at all unless they opt into demand side management programs. The vast majority of customers want to be served firm. And, I can tell you right now, my wife's running the air conditioning at our home as much as possible to keep cool today. And she would, probably not like to be interrupted, same way that these customers would not like to be interrupted.
Yeah. The French that are over here for the soccer games are enjoying the air conditioning. I tell you, they really are. Let me think. On the curtailment, utilizing Smith to eliminate having to curtail and have reliability on the system when you have to curtail, since 70% of what Mr. Stillman said was in the queue was ESAs, and we're building generation for data centers. Will they be curtailed first?
That would be the idea. Under the ESA curtailment provisions, we would curtail those customers before we have any other type of organized load shed on the system. So we would, the same way that we've modeled it effectively, we use other resource systems that are available. And before we have to curtail the rest of the system, we would look at those curtailment provisions to make
Okay,
it.
fair enough. Last question, Mr. Browning, I lose count. How many CTs is Duke in building, in the process of building or planning to build? Is it 7 now?
We currently have 4 CCs in the field, 2 CTs, 3 additional CTs in the Carolinas in planning, and 3 CCs in planning.
So what does that make for the total?
Commissioner, I can probably help with this. From a IRP planning perspective,
Right.
we start with CC 1 and 2. Those are the first 2 CCs at Person County. We have CC 3, that's the Anderson, South Carolina located combined cycle. So there's 3 that have approved CPCNs or CEPCNs by North and South Carolina at this time. We have the Marshall 1 and 2 CTs. Those are
That's 5.
That's 5 gas units. The proposed facility would be a 6th. And then in our CPIRP, we've recommended CCs 4 and 5 and CTs 6 and 7. So that's a total of 12 gas assets to help meet this load over the coming years.
Okay, and of course, on the Smith CT, you reduced, as Mr. Donashaw said, from 66 months to 33. Is that because the 2 vendors tell you that they can meet the requirements?
No, that's because of the transmission projects itself. So that's really just on the transmission side. So that's really independent of the gas turbines.
But the 2 vendors, is it GE and somebody else I was reading? Who are the 2 vendors that are going to bid, I guess, for the CT at Smith?
Make sure we don't get any confidential information. I don't. I know the name of who that company is, but
I know who the companies are. I don't know if it's confidential.
I don't either.
Well, it's okay. We'll disregard that, strike that. That'll be fine. Mr. Browning, you have in your purview of responsibilities in your job, you have the current bids, and then you have the current cost. Are the CTs that you are dealing with at this time, are they on budget or under budget or over budget? And how will that apply? Because you said $500 million for the CT at Smith, and the numbers I've seen over my time here, and certainly from business over time with inflation and procurement and all the other things that are available in the supply chain, the price creeps up. What's your situation with the current CTs that you're dealing with now? And your expectation on Smith, I guess, is going to be firm at $500 million. Is that correct?
That's correct. Currently, all of our projects in the field that have been approved remain on budget. For those that are in development, we continue to see escalation, mainly with the combustion turbines. And we've got that contract already signed for the Smith facility. And we're currently reviewing the EPC contracts to make sure everything's covered. And we are still confident with a reduction in the EPC contract of what we submitted.
Okay, are you comfortable with cost not to exceed on Smith?
Mr. Hickenbacher, were you interested in?
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
I know they recited a number. I don't hope that
Yeah,
number is less
I'm
than
not asking for a number, gentlemen.
No, yeah, we may have had some information that we marked as confidential.
That's what I was
provided
afraid of,
in
as
the response.
the minute that was provided.
So we'll.
We
like to
will
speak-
clarify that for the record and see what might need to be done. I wasn't sure I knew that figure, but
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Browning had stated a few minutes ago, a number. That-
Okay, well, I'm not asking for a number, so where am I objected or where?
No, what was your last question?
My question was, are you comfortable with a line item not to exceed? In other words, if you got $500 million, you can't go over it, or Duke pays the difference.
I would say we'd be comfortable with that
Okay.
after we refine our numbers and get a better estimate on the actual cost.
Great, I'll make sure that happens for you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Commissioner Vandervaart.
Just a very brief follow-up. I thought, maybe tell me if I'm wrong, but I thought that the curtailment, or how many of the curtailment provisions are tied to ESAs that have backup generation? Because that's where the 50 hours typically comes from the Rice MAC, right? So I mean, is there a relationship there?
We are agnostic to whether or not the customers decide to have backup generation, to allow them to come online as we're growing into our 22% reserve margin and pursuing the resources needed to serve them firm. This is a mandatory requirement of their ESA. So whether they decide they want to supplement their own operations with backup generation is really a business decision for them, but it's irrespective of what they do, it's included in those ESAs for those certain large load
But
customers.
do the ESAs limit it to 50 hours?
It does.
Okay, and that's coincidentally the same number of hours that the Rice MAC allows you to run your generator without triggering any compliance issues, but.
I'm not specifically aware of any which hour limitations.
Okay,
we have.
thank you.
Chair Brawley.
Mr. Browning, I was listening to the exchange between you and Commissioner Tucker, and it sounds like Commissioner Tucker believes he's just made a deal with you that he's going to set a number not to exceed, and you're going to accept it. Do you have authority to do that?
I'm not 100% sure. Now, the way I understood it is I set the number and Mr. Tucker says yes or no.
Okay.
That's the right answer.
That's a better answer, but
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Thanks for the clarification. Appreciate it.
And for purposes of the record, Commissioner Tucker's understanding differently, then the rest will come from your paycheck and any enumeration you receive henceforth and evermore after you are discharged from employment.
Oh, man.
But having said that, we're now on a point where we're having questions on commissioner questions.
Thank you. Presiding Commissioner McKissick, just a few. Mr. Donishad, Commissioner McKissick asked you about the fact that the companies had stated in rebuttal testimony that the lead time had reduced from 66 months to 33 months in the DICE's Phase 2 report. Can you provide a little bit more just testimony and discussion about how that reduction impacts the company's ability to execute on the project in a timely manner?
Right. Yes, I mean, there are, a bunch of projects that were in the list of projects that would need to be done for the Smith project to be done to come online. I think it's the Richmond Industrial 230 was kind of like the main project that really was driving the schedule. And so with that project getting reduced, right, from 66 months, 5.5 years, to 33 months, that being critical path, basically we sign an IA and then the work gets done. There's also a way that we can accelerate things with an E&P agreement, engineering and procurement agreement, and that actually has been signed for that project. So that work is already going even before an IA is signed. But the point is, with that critical path on transmission, that allows the whole project to come in on schedule and to be energized and to be able to be used and useful and in service by January 2030.
So do you feel confident at this point that DEP would be able to deliver the project by the 2030 proposed in-service date?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Quinto, So you were asked by Commissioner Tucker about the runtime of the Smith CT. And are you aware that during Winter Storm Fern back in January, we set an all-time hourly peak on the
Yes.
system?
Yes, I believe I heard that from Witness Holman in the CPIRP hearing where he stated over the last 3 peak seasons from this past 26 winter, 25 summer, and 25 winter, we hit all-time system peaks in 3 consecutive seasons.
And can you explain for the commission the value of a facility like the Smith CT during those types of extreme weather events, similar to the one we just experienced during Winter Storm Fern?
Yeah, absolutely. As I discussed, these peaking resources are generally not expected from a design perspective to operate across the entire year. They're really limited to a handful of periods of peak conditions, and that's exactly what this unit does. It provides that ability to dispatch to operate for several hours or days at a time as needed to provide that critical reliability for the system, especially when we look at widespread weather events that may be impacting our neighbors and our ability or the cost effectiveness to even get energy from those neighbors. So it's a really important resource that we have on our system and able to maintain that reliability. Each of the resources in our resource plan have their own specific roles as we look out into the future. And this proposed facility is going to be that peaking resource that runs during these winter events to maintain reliability for the system.
And specific to the question about runtime, I think there was some discussion where you may have said that after the first 10 years of its life, it doesn't run very little it doesn't run very much from a modeling perspective, but in the actual real world during extreme weather events, would you expect that the Smith CT would run well beyond 10 years during these kind of extreme weather events?
Oh yeah, if the weather trends continue, we may continue to see more peaky type of weather where these resources get called on more often to run, and especially relative to our weather normal plan. It doesn't necessarily show that from an operational perspective on how often it would run, but you can expect it to run throughout its life to maintain reliability of the system.
Thank you. And then finally, Mr. Browning, can you remind the commission how long you've been with the PMC organization?
With PMC?
Yes.
Just over a decade.
Okay. And would you agree that even the most prudently managed construction project can face cost escalation due to unforeseen factors?
Absolutely.
Okay. And those factors, the company attempts to anticipate in its cost estimate, but you would agree that at times some of those factors are beyond the company's control, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Okay. And is it your understanding that if the Smith CT CPCN application is approved, that the DEP would seek ongoing review of its construction costs from the commission?
Correct.
And so that would provide the commission with an opportunity to have insight into costs that are being incurred, as well as the any changes or modifications to the current cost estimate for the facility. Is that correct?
Correct. Even the schedule.
Okay. So at this point, do you feel like kind of locking in a cost cap or a specific cost estimate is consistent with Duke Energy's plans to manage the facility and then seek ongoing review?
It is not.
Okay. I do have one other question. So there was some discussion, actually it was directed at one of the public staff's witnesses, but it was about the F-frame technology. Can you give us just a general, your perspective on the technology differences between F-frame and advanced class combustion turbines and kind of how you view those different technologies?
It's got its case. I would not consider it obsolete or old technology. It's a little less efficient than the advanced class, and currently it is selling as fast as the advanced class. We know in some of our rebuttal testimony we checked, and currently it's 2031 before you can get an F class delivered from General Electric. And we have late 2029 for Siemens currently. So they are very popular still today.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
All right. Any questions on commissioner questions? Okay, very good. We're gonna go ahead and release this panel at this time. It has been brought to my attention by attorneys with the commission staff that figure that Mr. Browning provided was indeed confidential. I know I had some concern about it, and you did too, Attorney Hickenbacher. So I don't know how you might like to address it, if you'd like to waive confidentiality, or if we'd like to go back and try to approach this in some way that would we could always change the video stream related to it, but it's already out there too. So I assume that the name and identity of the vendor, I don't know if that was confidential or not. It may not have been, but certainly the figure was. So let me ask you how you would like to see this addressed.
I think for the purposes of this proceeding, we will not recommend any specific changes today, but we'll follow up with the commission with any filings or further action that we think may be necessary.
That's fine. Are you okay with that as well? And Attorney Duffy, is that okay with you? All right. Well, thank you for your testimony today, and you're now released. You can begin your 4th of July holiday.
Thank you.
And I'm sure everybody else in this room will want to do the same. Let's make sure we have all of the documents that have been identified officially admitted as per the record. Is there anything that anybody is aware of that I have failed to admit into the record at this time, so we can make certain that that is done?
Nothing on that question, Commissioner, but circling back to the question about the
Yes.
potentially sensitive information, I think we would make a request on the record, if possible, to attempt to scrub the video stream of that specific section, if possible. Then obviously to note in the written transcript that that information is confidential and redacted if necessary.
We will duly note that. We will see what we can do to go back to the video and get that that section and that portion of the testimony omitted. And certainly in the transcript and the record, we can identify that as confidential. Are there any objections to that? Okay, I'm not seeing any. All right, this is kind of a catch-all provision, but without objection, any pre-file testimony and any pre-file cross and redirect exhibits which were marked for identification and for which I have not yet made a ruling on in terms of their admissibility, they are hereby admitted in case there was such an omission. Pursuant to paragraph 27 of the scheduling order, post-hearing briefs and proposed orders are due no later than 30 days from today. Is there any further business that we need to attend to today? Otherwise, not seeing any, we are hereby adjourned. I hope you have a wonderful holiday. Thank you.
Thank you.